When Ethan Sterling saw the employee crying in the parking lot, holding a sick child, his heart stopped, not because he felt pity, but because he recognized those tears from 800 years ago. He was leaving his company, Sterling Resorts, at the end of another day filled with endless meetings. The sky had darkened quickly, and the rain started to fall hard, as it often did in October. Ethan opened his umbrella and walked to his black Cadillac, parked in the reserved spot. That's when he saw her. A young woman, maybe in her early 20s, was sitting on the ground in the parking lot, completely soaked. She held a small child against her chest, trying to shield her from the rain with her own body. The woman was crying. It wasn't a silent cry. It was a cry of despair from someone who had reached their absolute limit. Ethan stopped. Something inside him stirred. It wasn't ordinary compassion. It was something deeper, older, more disturbing. He felt as if he had seen this scene before, exactly this scene. A woman crying in the rain, holding something precious, completely alone. For a second, the image flickered. Not the real image of the woman in the parking lot, but another image, superimposed. Ancient stones, a castle courtyard, the same woman, but with different clothes, medieval attire, crying the same way, under the same rain. Ethan blinked. The image vanished. If you've ever felt like the world was against you, this story will touch you in a way you didn't expect, because what you're about to hear isn't about compassion. It's about recognition of something your soul has held onto through centuries. Ethan walked over to the woman. She looked up, and when their eyes met, something exploded inside his chest. It was as if 1,000 memories were trying to surface at the same time, but none could form a complete picture. Just sensations, pain, loss, guilt, and something stronger than all of that, recognition. The woman felt it too. He saw it in her eyes, a spark of confusion, of strangeness, as if she were looking at someone she should know, but couldn't remember from where. "Do you need help?" Ethan heard his own voice say. The words came out before he even thought them. The woman wiped her tears with the back of her hand, but it was useless. The rain kept falling. "My daughter," she said, her voice breaking. "She has a high fever. I took her to the hospital, but they said I need to pay up front. I don't have it. I don't have anything." Ethan looked at the child. The little girl couldn't have been more than 2 years old. Her face was flushed with fever, her eyes half closed. She was breathing fast, panting. "How old is she?" Ethan asked. 2, the woman replied. "Lily. Her name is Lily." Ethan didn't know why he did what he did next. He was a businessman. He didn't get involved in personal causes. He donated to charities, yes, but impersonally, through bank transfers. He didn't kneel on the wet ground of a parking lot, but he kneeled. "Take my card," he said, taking his wallet out of the inside pocket of his suit. "Take her to St. Jude's Hospital. Tell them she's a patient of Ethan Sterling. They'll take care of her." The woman looked at the platinum credit card he was holding out. She hesitated. "I can't accept this, sir. I don't know you. I have no way to pay you back." "I'm not asking you to pay me back," Ethan said. His voice came out firmer than he intended. "Your daughter is sick. That's all that matters." The woman took the card with trembling hands. When their fingers touched, both of them felt it. An electrical shock. It wasn't a metaphor, it was real. A current that ran through them both at the same time, making them gasp. Ethan saw another image. Quick, fragmented, chained hands, blood dripping, rain falling. And the same woman, screaming a name he couldn't hear. The woman dropped the card, startled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know what." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to control his racing heart. "What's your name?" he asked. "Evelyn. Evelyn Reed." Evelyn. The name echoed inside him like something familiar, as if he had said that name 1,000 times before, in another place, in another time. "Ethan," he said, extending his hand again, this time prepared for the shock that was coming. Ethan Sterling. Evelyn shook his hand. The shock came again, but this time they didn't let go. They stood there, two strangers in the rain, holding hands, looking at each other as if they were trying to solve a mystery they didn't even know existed. It was Evelyn who let go first. I need to get Lily to the hospital, she said, getting up with difficulty, holding the child with one arm and trying to shield her from the rain with the other. Ethan opened his umbrella and held it over her. My driver can take you, he said. No, Mr. Sterling, you've already done too much. Ethan, he corrected. Call me Ethan. Evelyn looked at him, confused. Please, Ethan insisted, not understanding why it was so important that she say his name. Thank you, Ethan, she said softly, and when she said his name, Ethan felt as if something inside him snapped into place, as if 800 years of searching had finally ended. He watched Evelyn walk to an old cab that was parked down the street. She got in, still holding Lily, and the car drove away. Ethan stood there, in the rain that was now falling lighter, watching the cab disappear. He didn't know what had just happened, but he knew, with absolute certainty, that this wasn't the last time he would see Evelyn Reed. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stood in the study of his estate, looking out the window at the dark garden outside. The rain had stopped, but he could still hear the sound of it hitting the stones. He thought about Evelyn, her eyes, the way she held her daughter, the feeling he had when he touched her hand. Ethan didn't believe in destiny. He believed in hard work, in strategy, in logic. He built a hotel empire from the ground up by age 38 because he planned every move with surgical precision, but there was no logic in what he felt in the parking lot. At 3 in the morning, Ethan finally went to bed. He closed his eyes and immediately fell into a deep sleep. And he dreamed. He was in a stone courtyard. The sky was dark, stormy. It was raining heavily. He was wearing strange clothes, made of leather and metal, covered in mud and blood. His wrists were chained. Men were dragging him across the courtyard. He tried to resist, but there were too many. He was screaming a name. Eleanor! Eleanor! No! Eleanor, please! And then he saw her. A young woman dressed in an elaborate medieval gown, jewels at her neck and wrists. She ran toward him, her face twisted with pain, screaming for them to stop. But the guards held her back. The man Ethan was in the dream looked at her one last time, and Ethan recognized her face. It was Evelyn. Ethan woke up screaming. He sat up in bed, his heart pounding violently, sweat pouring down his face. The room was dark, silent, empty, but the image remained. Evelyn. No, Eleanor. Or both. The same person. The same soul. What would you have done? Don't lie to yourself. If you saw someone and felt with every fiber of your being that you knew that person from before, from another place, another time, would you run or would you face it? Comment down below. The next morning, Ethan was at the Sterling Resorts office at 7 a.m. He tried to focus on work, tried to review the quarterly financial reports, tried to prepare for the meeting with investors at 10, but his mind kept drifting back to Evelyn. At 9 a.m., the phone rang. It was St. Jude's Hospital. Mr. Sterling, the voice said. The child you referred yesterday, Lily Reed, she's doing fine. It was a respiratory infection, but she's already being treated. She should be discharged tomorrow. Thank you, Ethan said. And the mother, Evelyn Reed, is she all right? There was a pause. Ms. Reed stayed here at the hospital, in the chair next to her daughter. She didn't want to go home. Ethan hung up the phone and stared at the wall for a full 5 minutes. Then, he made a decision. He called his secretary. Brenda, I need you to do something for me. Find information on a woman named Evelyn Reed, approximate age 28, has a 2-year-old daughter named Lily. Brenda was efficient. 2 hours later, She came back with a file. Evelyn Reed, 28 years old, Brenda said. Divorced. Worked as a housekeeper at 3 different companies in the last 2 years. Was fired from the last one 3 weeks ago for excessive absences, justified by her daughter's illness. Lives in a rented apartment in East End. 3 months behind on rent. No family. Parents deceased. Ethan read the file. Evelyn was invisible. One among millions of people who work hard, get little, and live on the edge of survival. But she wasn't invisible to him. She needs a job, Ethan said. Brenda blinked. Sir, Evelyn Reed. She needs a job. Hire her. Brenda hesitated. For what position, Mr. Sterling? Ethan thought. Housekeeper. At my estate. Brenda opened her mouth to question, then closed it. She'd known Ethan for 10 years. She'd never seen him act on impulse, but something in that moment told her that questioning would be a mistake. I'll arrange it, sir. 2 days later, Evelyn received a call. She was in her apartment, rocking Lily to sleep, when the phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, Ms. Reed. This is Brenda Miller, from Sterling Resorts. Mr. Ethan Sterling would like to offer you a position. Evelyn almost dropped the phone. What? Housekeeper at Mr. Sterling's private estate. Salary of $3,000 a month, with housing included in one of the suites on the property. Sundays off. Full health insurance for you and your daughter. Would you be interested? Evelyn couldn't speak for a full 5 seconds. Yes, I'm interested. Great. Can you start tomorrow? At 9 a.m.? Tomorrow. Yes. Evelyn hung up the phone and looked at Lily, who was sleeping peacefully in her crib. She didn't understand. Why would a man like Ethan Sterling, whom she'd met for 5 minutes in a parking lot, offer her not just a job, but housing, health insurance, everything? But she wasn't in a position to question. She needed that job. She needed that chance. The next day, at 9 a.m. sharp, Evelyn rang the doorbell at the gate of the Sterling estate. The property was absurd. A modern 3-story palace, surrounded by elaborate gardens that looked like they'd come straight out of a magazine. The iron gate opened automatically, and Evelyn walked up the cobblestone path to the front door, holding Lily's hand. Brenda greeted her. She was a middle-aged woman, elegant, efficient. Ms. Reed, welcome. Let me show you to your quarters. Evelyn followed Brenda through the estate. It was all opulent, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, works of art on the walls. But Evelyn wasn't impressed by the wealth. She was struck by something stranger. She knew that house. Not rationally, but there was something familiar, as if she'd walked those halls before, as if she knew that if she turned right, there would be a spiral staircase. And there was. Brenda opened the door to a suite on the 2nd floor. These will be your quarters. Bedroom, a private bathroom, a walk-in closet. The kitchen is shared, but you can use it whenever you need to. Mr. Sterling rarely eats breakfast at home. Evelyn walked into the room. It was bigger than her entire previous apartment. There was a king-sized bed, a large television, even a small couch by the window. Lily ran to the bed and jumped on it, giggling. Brenda smiled. I have 2 daughters. I know how it is. You can leave little Lily in the room while you work, if you need to. We have a partnered daycare that offers a discount. Thank you, Evelyn said, her voice faltering a little. Thank you very much. Brenda nodded. Mr. Sterling asked me to tell you to get settled in today. You'll start working properly tomorrow. Anything. Just call me. Brenda left, and Evelyn was alone in the room with Lily. She sat on the bed and looked around. This didn't make sense. None of this made sense, but she was there, and for the first time in years, she felt something she'd forgotten how to feel. Hope. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She lay staring at the ceiling of the room, listening to Lily breathe softly beside her. She thought about Ethan, about the encounter in the parking lot, about the way he looked at her, about the feeling when he touched her hand. And then she thought about something even stranger. She dreamed about him. Not that night, but before, weeks before. months before. She dreamed of a man with dark eyes, dressed in old clothes, being dragged across a stone courtyard. And she, in the dream, was wearing a heavy dress, jewels on her wrist, and shouting a name. Miguel. Evelyn sat up in bed, her heart racing. Why had she dreamed that? Why now, upon meeting Ethan, had the dream returned with such clarity? She got up and went to the window. Outside, the gardens of the estate were lit by soft lights, and further beyond, she saw a silhouette, a man, standing in the garden, looking up. Ethan. He was staring up at her window. And when their eyes met, even from that distance, Evelyn felt it again, that impossible recognition, that certainty that she knew this man, not from days ago, but from much farther back, from a place she couldn't remember, but her soul did. Ethan raised his hand. It wasn't a wave, it was something more, a gesture of acknowledgement, of confirmation. Evelyn pressed her hand against the window, and for the first time, she allowed the impossible thought to take shape. What if she had known that man before? Not in this life, but in another, 800 years ago. Evelyn's first days at the estate were strange, not because of the change in lifestyle. She'd worked as a housekeeper before. She knew how to clean, organize, cook. These things were familiar. What was strange was Ethan. He wasn't like other employers. He didn't give direct orders. He didn't inspect her work. In fact, he barely spoke to her. But Evelyn felt his eyes. Every time she entered a room, Ethan was there, not obviously. He'd pretend to read documents, talk on the phone, review emails. But she felt the weight of his gaze. And the worst part was, she did the same thing. She caught herself looking at him when she thought he wasn't watching, observing the way he held his coffee cup, the small scar above his right eyebrow, the way he ran his hand through his hair when he was thinking. There was something deeply familiar in every gesture. On the fourth morning, Evelyn was cleaning the second-floor library when Ethan came in. She didn't hear him arrive. She simply felt it. She turned, and there he was, standing in the doorway, looking at her. "Sorry," Ethan said. "I didn't mean to startle you." "You didn't," Evelyn lied, her heart pounding fast. "I was just dusting the shelves." Ethan walked into the room. He walked to one of the bookshelves and ran his finger along the spines of the books, as if he were looking for something specific. "Do you like to read?" he asked, without looking at her. "When I have time," Evelyn replied. "Lately, I haven't had much." Ethan took a book off the shelf. It was old, with a worn leather binding. "This is one of my favorites," he said, extending the book to Evelyn. "It's about reincarnation, about souls that meet through different lives." Evelyn took the book with trembling hands. When her fingers touched Ethan's, the shock came again, that electric current, that sensation of déjà vu, so intense that she almost dropped the book. Ethan clasped her hand before she could drop it. "You feel it too," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Evelyn tried to pull her hand away, but he held it tighter, not forcefully, but with urgency. "Feel what?" she whispered, even though she knew the answer. "This," Ethan said, interlacing his fingers with hers. "This connection, like we've known each other before." Evelyn closed her eyes. The images came stronger this time. The stone courtyard, the rain, the man in chains, herself screaming, and a name. Michael. Always Michael. "I dream about you," she confessed, still with her eyes closed. "For months, even before I met you. I dream that you're being dragged away, chained up, and I'm screaming, but no one hears me." Ethan took a deep breath. "I dream too," he said. "I dream that you're crying in the rain, holding something stained with blood, and I can't reach you. I try, but I'm trapped, always trapped." Evelyn opened her eyes. Tears were streaming down her face without her realizing it. "This doesn't make sense," she said. "It does," Ethan replied, bringing his face closer to hers. "It makes sense in a way that it shouldn't, but it does. He kissed her. It wasn't a gentle, exploratory kiss. It was a kiss of recognition, of 800 years of separation finally ending, of two souls finding each other again. Evelyn responded. She dropped the book, which fell to the floor with a dull thud, and wrapped her arms around Ethan's neck. And for a moment, just a moment, everything made sense. But then reality returned. Evelyn pulled away, gasping. "No," she said, taking a step back. "We can't. I work for you. You're my employer. I'm your housekeeper. This is wrong." Ethan reached out to her. "Evelyn, please." "No," she repeated, so more firmly this time. "I need this job. Mr. Sterling, I have a daughter. I can't ruin this for what?" Ethan asked. "For something you've felt since before you met me. For something we both know goes beyond employer, housekeeper." Evelyn shook her head. "I don't know what I'm feeling. I just know this can't happen." She ran out of the library, leaving Ethan alone with the fallen book. That night, Evelyn sat on the floor of her room, watching Lily sleep. She was confused, scared, and at the same time, for the first time in years, feeling alive. She wanted Ethan, not just physically. It was something deeper. It was as if her soul recognized his soul, as if they'd been searching for each other for an eternity. But she couldn't allow it. She had responsibilities. She had a daughter. She had a life to rebuild, even if that life felt empty compared to what she felt when Ethan kissed her. A week passed without Ethan and Evelyn properly speaking. They avoided each other. When they had to be in the same room, Ethan pretended to work, and Evelyn pretended to clean, but the tension only grew. Until something changed. Evelyn was in the basement of the estate, looking for cleaning supplies, when she saw an old trunk in the corner. It was covered in dust, clearly forgotten for years. Curiosity trumped caution. She knelt down and opened the trunk. Inside were old documents, old photos, objects that seemed to be family heirlooms. And then she saw it, an oil portrait, small, about the size of a piece of paper. It was damaged at the edges, but the image was still clear. It was a young man, dressed in medieval soldier's clothing, leather armor, sword at his waist. And the face. Evelyn dropped the portrait, her hand trembling. The face was Ethan's, not just similar. It was identical. The same dark eyes, the same scar above his right eyebrow, even the way he looked out of the painting, with that characteristic intensity. But that was impossible. The portrait was clearly old, 13th century maybe. How could it be Ethan? Evelyn turned the portrait over. On the back, written in faded ink, was a name, Michael of Cordoba, guard to Duchess Eleanor of Toledo, executed in 1225 for treason. Evelyn couldn't breathe. Michael, the name she screamed in her dreams. She heard footsteps behind her and turned. Ethan stood at the entrance to the basement looking at Lily with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "How long have you been standing there, Ethan?" Lily asked. "Long enough," Ethan replied. He descended the stairs and knelt beside her, picking up the portrait. He stared at the image for a long moment. "I found this years ago, when I bought this estate. The previous owner said it belonged to his family, passed down through generations, a distant ancestor." "But that man is you, Ethan," Lily whispered. "I know," Ethan said simply. "And you asked if I thought it was impossible. The answer would be yes. But it's not. Because you're here. Because I dream about this man. Because I know, without a shadow of a doubt, that that man was me, in another life." Lily rose, staggering slightly. "This is insane." "It is," Ethan agreed, rising as well. "But you also think it's true. I see it in your eyes." Lily looked at her left wrist. She had always had a birthmark there, small, in the shape of a perfect circle. The doctor said it was just pigmentation, but Lily had always felt it was something more. And now, looking at Ethan, at the portrait of Miguel, she knew. It wasn't a birthmark. It was the mark from where Eleanor, the Duchess, wore her gold bracelet. "Show me your wrist," Ethan said, as if reading her mind. Lily hesitated, then extended her arm. Ethan gently held her wrist and ran his thumb over the circular mark. "Eleanor wore a gold bracelet here," he said, his voice low. "I know because I put it on her. Once. The last time I saw her, before I was dragged away to my execution." "How do you know that, Ethan?" Lily whispered. Ethan raised his eyes to meet hers. "Because I remember, and that's when everything changed." Ethan pulled Lily close and kissed her again. But this time, the moment their lips touched, something exploded. They both saw it. It wasn't a dream, it wasn't imagination. It was memory. 1225. Toledo, Spain. Toledo Castle. Lily was Eleanor, daughter of the Duke, heiress to lands and titles. She was 19 years old and betrothed to an earl she had never met. Ethan was Miguel, son of peasants, recruited into the Duke's army at 15, promoted to Eleanor's personal guard at 20 for his loyalty. They weren't supposed to love each other. It was forbidden, impossible, fatal, but they did. Secret meetings in the gardens, whispered words in empty corridors, stolen touches when no one was looking. And one night, in the rain, in the castle courtyard, Miguel placed his gold bracelet on Eleanor's wrist. "When I return from this war," he promised, "I'll take you away from here. It doesn't matter about your family, your position, none of it. We'll run away. We'll be free," Eleanor cried and promised to wait for him. But someone saw them. When Miguel returned from the war 3 months later, he was arrested. Treason, they said. Dishonoring the Duke's daughter was treason. He was executed in the castle courtyard, in the rain. Eleanor begged, screamed, tried to stop it, but she was restrained. The last thing Miguel saw was Eleanor being dragged away, screaming his name. And the last thing Eleanor saw was Miguel's blood mixing with the rain on the stones of the courtyard. 3 days later, Eleanor died. Some say it was heartbreak. They say she simply stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped living. They found her in the courtyard, lying in the same spot where Miguel had been executed. She was holding the gold bracelet stained with blood and whispering her last words. "I'll find you in every life, no matter who I am. My soul will know yours." Lily and Ethan snapped back to the present at the same time, gasping for air, in shock. They were on the basement floor, embracing, both crying. "I remember," Lily said between sobs. "I remember everything. You being dragged away, me screaming, me dying in that courtyard waiting for you to come back." "I remember too," Ethan said, holding her tightly against his chest. "I remember promising that I'd find you. And I did. 800 years later, I found you." They stayed there on the cold basement floor, holding on to each other as if they were afraid of losing each other again. But there was one question that neither of them wanted to ask. What now? Now that they knew the truth, now that they remembered, what would they do with it? Lily was the first to speak. "We can't just ignore our current lives. I have Lily. You have your company. We're different people now." "We are," Ethan agreed. "But our souls are the same, and I'm not going to waste this life pretending that I don't know you, that I don't love you, because I do love you, Lily. I loved you as Miguel, and I love you as Ethan." Lily closed her eyes. "What if it happens again? What if we love each other and it all ends in tragedy like before?" "Then it will end," Ethan said. "But at least we will have tried. At least we won't have spent another life apart." Lily looked at him. At the eyes she knew from 800 years ago, at the man who promised to find her in every life, and she made the decision that would change everything. "Okay," she said, "let's try." The following days were the strangest and most wonderful of Lily's life. She and Ethan no longer hid what they felt, not from each other at least. They spent the nights talking about their current lives, about the memories that came in flashes, about fears, hopes, dreams, and about Lily. Ethan became attached to the little girl in a way that surprised even himself. He never wanted to have children, never thought about family. But with Lily, it was different. It was as if he knew her from before too. And perhaps he did. One night, as Lily was putting Lily to bed, the little girl looked at Ethan and said something that made them both freeze. "Papa Miguel," she said, reaching out her little arms. Lily almost dropped the little girl. "What did you say, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Papa Miguel," Lily repeated, smiling at Ethan. Ethan picked Lily up, his eyes filled with tears. "How does she know that name?" Lily whispered. Ethan shook his head. "I don't know. But maybe souls recognize more than we understand. Maybe Lily was there too somehow. Maybe we always come back together." Lily sat on the bed, processing. "If that's true," she said, "then we have a chance to do things differently this time, to be a family." Ethan kissed Lily's forehead and then looked at Lily. "We are a family. Now, in this life. And I'll do everything to protect both of you." But the universe had other plans. 3 weeks after Lily and Ethan acknowledged their feelings, a storm began. Not just a meteorological one, but an emotional one too. Ethan's family found out about Lily. His older brother, Thomas, showed up at the estate unannounced. He was a hard man, calculating, who never approved of Ethan's decisions that didn't involve profit. When he saw Evelyn leaving Ethan's room in the morning, his expression was pure contempt. "Are you kidding me, Thomas?" he said, looking from Evelyn to Ethan. "An employee? You're wasting your time with an employee? Watch what you say," Ethan warned, his voice low and dangerous. Thomas ignored him. "She's obviously after your money, Ethan. Wake up. You're the CEO of a multi-million-dollar empire. She's, what, a cleaning lady with an illegitimate child?" Evelyn felt like she'd been punched in the stomach, but it was Ethan who exploded. "Get out of my house," he said, his voice cutting like glass. "Now!" Thomas laughed, without humor. "You're making a mistake. The board won't accept this. Our investors will question your judgment. You're risking everything for a woman who—" "I said get out!" Ethan shouted, and it wasn't a controlled shout. It was a shout of pure, primitive rage that came from 800 years of frustration. Thomas stared at his brother, shocked, then at Evelyn, and left without another word. Evelyn was trembling. "He's right," she said, quietly. "I'm going to ruin your life, your reputation, your business. This was a mistake." Ethan pulled her close. "It wasn't a mistake. And I don't care what Thomas or anyone else thinks. I care about you, about Lily, about us." But Evelyn saw the fear in his eyes, and she was afraid too, because 800 years ago, when Eleanor and Michael dared to love beyond social barriers, it ended in tragedy. What if history repeated itself? That night, the storm that had been brewing finally broke. Heavy rain, lightning, thunder that shook the windows of the estate. Evelyn was in the room with Lily when she heard a scream. "Ethan!" She ran into the hallway and saw Ethan at the top of the stairs, clutching his chest, his face contorted in pain. "Ethan!" Evelyn shouted, running to him. He fell to his knees. "I can't breathe," he gasped. "My chest feels like—" "Ambulance!" Evelyn shouted to Marcia, who had appeared in the hallway. "Call an ambulance, now!" But as she held Ethan, something else happened. The memories came, not in flashes. Complete, overwhelming. Evelyn saw it all again. The courtyard, the rain, Michael being executed, and she, Eleanor, dying 3 days later of chest pain. They said it was heartbreak, but Evelyn now knew the truth. Eleanor died of a broken heart. Literally, her body couldn't handle the loss. And now, 800 years later, Ethan was feeling the same pain. "No!" Evelyn cried, holding his face in her hands. "Not this time. You're not going to leave me this time. If this story is making you question your own decisions, if you feel like you need to share this with someone, Super thanks isn't just support. It's you saying, I saw, I felt, this matters. Ethan looked into her eyes, struggling to breathe. Eleanor, he whispered. Michael, Evelyn responded, tears falling. I love you, in every life, but you're not going to die. I won't let you. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. Paramedics took Ethan on the stretcher. Evelyn went with him, holding his hand the entire way. At St. Jude's Hospital, the doctors said it was a severe panic attack, extreme stress. It wasn't physical, it was psychological. But Evelyn knew different. It was the memory, the trauma of 800 years ago manifesting physically in the present. When Ethan finally woke up, hours later, the first thing he saw was Evelyn sitting beside the bed, still holding his hand. You stayed, he said, his voice hoarse. I always stay, Evelyn replied. In every life, Michael, I always stay. Ethan squeezed her hand, and that's when Evelyn realized they couldn't run from history. They couldn't pretend that 800 years didn't exist, but they could choose how that story ended. This time, 3 days later, Ethan was released from the hospital, and he did something that changed everything. He called an emergency meeting of the board of Sterling Resorts. Evelyn begged him not to do it, said it wasn't necessary, that they could keep things discreet, but Ethan refused. I've spent 800 years hiding what I felt, he said. I'm not going to do it again. At the meeting, with all the directors, investors, and family members present, Ethan made an announcement. I want to introduce someone, he said. Evelyn Reed, the woman I love, and Lily, her daughter, who I consider my own too. The silence was sepulchral. Thomas was the first to speak. Ethan, is this a joke? No, Ethan replied calmly. It's the truth. And if it affects my position in the company, if anyone here has a problem with my personal choices, I'm willing to resign. The shock was visible. Ethan Sterling had never, in 10 years, put anything above the company until now. One of the oldest investors, a man named Henry Sousa, cleared his throat. Mr. Sterling, he said, your personal choices are your own. As long as they don't affect the company's performance, I see no problem. Others agreed, some hesitant, others more open. Thomas, defeated, said nothing more. And so, for the first time in 800 years, Ethan and Evelyn could love without hiding. But there was one last test. Evelyn needed to see with her own eyes that that past life was real, that everything wasn't just coincidence, imagination, shared trauma. She needed proof. Ethan agreed. They traveled to Toledo, Spain. They took Lily too, in the ancient castle, now a museum. They walked through the same corridors where Eleanor and Michael met secretly, and in the courtyard, where the execution happened, Evelyn stopped. Here, she whispered. It was here. Ethan held her hand. They asked to speak with the museum curator, an elderly man named Javier. When they showed interest in the story of Duchess Eleanor and Michael, his eyes lit up. Ah, yes, it's one of the most tragic stories of this castle, Javier said. Duchess Eleanor and her guard, forbidden love. He was executed for treason. She died 3 days later. There's even a tapestry that depicts the final moment. He led them to a room closed to the public, and there, on the wall, it was a huge tapestry, dated 1226. It showed a castle courtyard, rain falling, a chained man being dragged away, and a woman dressed in noble attire, being held back by guards, screaming. The faces were clear: Michael, Eleanor, Ethan, and Evelyn. Evelyn covered her mouth with her hand, her legs almost giving way. Ethan held her. How is this possible? Evelyn whispered. Javier continued. The most intriguing detail, he mentioned, was that according to the records, Duchess Eleanor left behind a letter. It had been discovered last century, wax-sealed, hidden within a stone in the courtyard. She penned it on the very night she passed. He unlocked a display case and revealed an ancient parchment, safeguarded by glass. Evelyn read the words inscribed in Old Spanish, yet understood them perfectly. My beloved Michael, if there's life beyond this, if justice exists in the heavens, I swear I shall find you again. No matter how many centuries pass, no matter who I am or who you become, my soul will recognize yours. And this time, nothing will tear us apart. Eleanor de Toledo, 1225. Evelyn wept. Ethan shed tears. Javier looked at them, perplexed. Are you both all right? Ethan wiped his tears and smiled. Yes, we're fine. For the first time in 800 years, we are truly fine. They exited the museum, hand in hand. Lily slumbered peacefully in Ethan's arms. Outside, it began to rain. Evelyn gazed at the sky and felt something different. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. It was peace. The promise has been fulfilled, she whispered. Ethan kissed her forehead. And this time, we're staying together. If you didn't get chills just now, you might be soulless. Comment chills if you felt them. 6 months later, Ethan and Evelyn tied the knot. It was a small ceremony, only close friends and Marcia, who had become practically a mother to Evelyn. They held the ceremony in the garden of the estate, under the rain, on purpose. Because the rain was no longer a symbol of tragedy, it symbolized rebirth. Evelyn wore a simple white dress, and on her left wrist, concealing the circular birthmark, she wore a gold bracelet. Ethan had it custom made, an exact replica of the bracelet Michael had placed on Eleanor 800 years prior. When the officiant asked if they had anything they'd like to say to each other, Ethan spoke first. Evelyn, in another life, I vowed to find you. I vowed to love you in every existence. And today, before everyone, I make a new promise, that this life and all those to come will be ours, together. Evelyn tearfully responded, Michael, I waited 800 years for you, and I would have waited 800 more. But now that I've found you, I won't wait any longer. I'm going to live. I'm going to love. I'm going to be happy with you, with our daughter, with our family. They kissed in the rain, and Lily, safe in Marcia's arms, clapped and exclaimed, Daddy Michael, Mommy Eleanor. Everyone chuckled, but Evelyn and Ethan exchanged a knowing glance, because they understood. They knew that some souls are connected beyond time, beyond logic, beyond death, and that when two souls make a promise, nothing, not even 800 years of separation, can break that vow. A year later, Evelyn was pregnant. She and Ethan were in their bedroom, conducting an ultrasound at home with private equipment. When the doctor revealed the baby's gender, Evelyn looked at Ethan, her eyes sparkling. It's a boy, she said. Ethan held her hand. What are we going to name him? He asked. Evelyn smiled. Michael. We're going to name him Michael. Ethan laughed, overcome with emotion. What if he's as stubborn as I was? Then I'll love him even more, Evelyn replied. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Ethan and Evelyn sat in the garden, gazing at the stars. Do you think it will happen again? Evelyn asked. In another life, will we get lost and have to find each other again? Ethan paused for a moment. Perhaps. Or maybe this time, we've broken the cycle. Maybe this time, when we pass, it will be together, old, surrounded by children and grandchildren. And then, maybe in the next life we won't need to search, because we'll already know that we were always destined to be together. Evelyn rested her head on his shoulder. I like that version. Me too, Ethan said, kissing the top of her head. And there, beneath the stars, with the gentle sound of rain beginning to fall once more, Evelyn and Ethan finally understood. True love isn't about finding the perfect person, it's about finding the soul that recognizes yours. No matter how much time passes, no matter how many lives, no matter how many obstacles, some souls were simply made to be together. And 800 years is nothing when compared to eternity. This story shouldn't exist. Some truths are just too uncomfortable, but someone needs to tell it. When you click that golden heart down there, you become part of who keeps those stories alive. You're not just a spectator, you're a witness. 5 years later, Ethan was 43, Evelyn 33, Lily 7, Michael 4. They were back in Toledo again, visiting the castle. This time, Javier recognized them immediately. "You've returned," he said, smiling. "We have," Ethan confirmed. "We wanted to show our children." Javier observed Lily and Michael playing in the courtyard. "You have something special," he said. "You two, I've seen many couples over the years, but you possess a connection that goes beyond." Ethan and Evelyn exchanged a look and smiled. "You have no idea how much," Evelyn said. Before they departed, Evelyn requested to be alone in the courtyard for a few moments. She stood there, in the precise spot where Eleanor had died 800 years ago, and whispered, "We fulfilled the promise, Eleanor. You and Michael. We found each other, and this time we won." The wind rustled as if in response, and Evelyn felt for the first time since it had all begun that she could finally let the past go, because the present was more than enough. She had Ethan, she had Lily, she had Michael, she had a family, and she had peace. As they left the castle, Lily asked, "Mommy, why do you love Daddy so much?" Evelyn smiled and looked at Ethan, who was holding Michael. "Because, my darling," she said, "I've waited my whole life for him. Actually, I've waited much longer than that." Lily didn't understand, but one day she would, because some stories don't end. They simply continue, through generations, through lives. And this story, the story of Evelyn and Ethan, of Eleanor and Michael, of two souls who promised to find each other in every existence, was just one of the many times they had met. And it certainly wouldn't be the last. Because true love, the kind that comes from the soul, does not perish. It simply waits, and when it finally reunites, nothing in the universe can separate it again. You have two choices now. Forget you ever heard this, or accept that all stories have a dark side. Which do you choose? And more importantly, what story from your own life have you never told? Have you ever looked at someone and felt like you knew them before? Like you waited lifetimes for that encounter? If so, you're not alone, and you're not wrong, because some connections transcend time, and this is the proof.